All right, today we're going to talk about gaslighting and other techniques that can happen from the covert narcissist. This is part three of a series. We're going to dive into this today because a lot of people don't understand how this works. And I'm sure you've heard of it. The term gaslighting is really an overused term nowadays, similar to a lot of terms that are used in mental health that get used to sort of blame shift or accuse romantic partners of things. All right, gaslighting is one of those things. So let's talk about how that shows up and the difference between maybe differences in perceptions and healthy relationships with people who aren't necessarily gaslighting, but there's just a difference in perception about what happened and maybe disagreement. And then, of course, outright gaslighting. So we'll look at that as well as some other techniques that happen in covert narcissism as well. All right. Let me make sure. Okay, good. My audio seems to be doing what it needs to be doing. All right. So, yeah, let's talk more about covert narcissism and some of the techniques, and we'll get into gaslighting, right, as one of those things. So, everyone knows gaslighting pretty well, or at least they think they do. So, let's kind of go over, though, the basics of what that is and see what other things we can get into today. Because I have a really long list of tools and manipulation tactics that happen when you're in a relationship with somebody with a personality disorder, particularly covert narcissism. So get into it. So gaslighting is a form of manipulation, tends to occur in covert types of abusive relationships. Yeah, it's a form of emotional abuse. Okay. And it's where we could call her the abuser or the narcissist will mislead you or the target and create a false narrative and get you to question your judgments and get you to question your reality. This ultimately makes you feel unsure about your perceptions of the world and perceptions of what's going on. And you start to feel out of control, like maybe you're losing your sanity. All right. It's usually performed over an extended period of time, and it causes you to question the validity of your own thoughts, perceptions of reality, or your own memories. It can lead to a lot of confusion, a loss of self-confidence, and uncertainty in your own mental stability and your own sense of self, your own identity. Um, it's a common result of this is then dependency on the person that you are who's gaslighting you. It becomes a dependency because you're unsure. Usually in a covert narcissist situation, it's like you're being presented as the bad guy who's doing offenses and things to your girl. Okay, and so you're doing these bad things to her, and of course you're really not. This is not what reality is, but you're being told this, and you're being you're given cause to believe this, and so you are constantly on the defense, constantly trying to make your girl happy and make try to make up for these perceived offenses. All right, so all these wrongdoings that you're supposedly doing and all these bad things that you're doing, you're constantly trying to make up for those, and this causes you to qualify to your girl and to lose your frame. All right, and loss of frame, of course, is a loss of the relationship as far as being a man is concerned. So it's really problematic, obviously, and the way to stop it is actually quite simple, which is to have a strong frame in your life. you know so if you have strong frame and you're not willing to bend or budge on, you need to be able to objectively. This is why inner game is so important. This is why it's a major component of like my mastermind group or any coaching that I do with guys, because being able to deal with your own internal thoughts, emotions, and perceptions is critically important when you're in any relationship. And you can't lead a relationship if you don't have clarity on your thoughts, perceptions, and emotional reactions. Now, this doesn't mean that you're going to have the right or correct emotional reaction or the most optimal emotional reaction all the time. Like sometimes you might react in a way that's poor, poorly. But having the awareness and the tools to sort of be able to analyze yourself and understand yourself and what you're doing can help you fix or change things when you make mistakes. But it can also just give you the awareness. Did you actually make a mistake, or is this other person trying to shift the attention away from her behavior onto yours and actually onto things that you're not even really doing? Right. And so this can really sneak up on anybody because you're with this girl and you trust her opinion, you have an emotional attachment there, you grow into your relationship, and then next thing you know, she's telling you, she's presenting reality in a way that's not true. You know, you guys, she's doing things to maybe cause you emotional distress intentionally, and then when you're having that distress, then she's attributing that distress to something that's wrong with you, or something that you are doing that's wrong or bad, or some part of your character that's flawed, or some type of thing that you need to fix, right? And all of this shifts the attention away from her and away from what she's doing, and that's pretty toxic and controlling and so forth. And so it's a passive way to really get frame from you. All right. It's because what happens is she's controlling the narrative and the frame, and you're accepting or believing what she's saying as if it's true. You know, that's really problematic, isn't it? Little comment. If you guys got any any big questions, throwing a super chat or something is will help me notice that. And so that's my time is limited lately on YouTube, so I want to make sure I get to your questions, and that'll help. But I appreciate this comment. Just started watching the channel, and thanks for the content. Yeah, glad to have you here. We're having higher level conversations here. Unlike a lot of the stuff you got on YouTube, that's really designed to market to you in a way that gets the likes and the clicks and all that crap. Um, Designed to help you. A lot of that stuff isn't really there to help you as much. So hopefully I can be more helpful to you. But yeah, so back to gaslighting though, it's just here's what can happen too, because a lot of people just throw that term around a lot. It's like, okay, it's like they've done that experience where they watch an accident and then they ask everybody, they'll show an accident on a television screen to a classroom full of people, and then they'll ask the classroom a bunch of questions about the accident. Some of the questions might look like, well, what color was the car? Okay. And you'd be surprised, maybe you wouldn't be, depending on your background, of how wildly if the car is blue. Others would consist that it's red or green or whatever. And they could get into an argument over this. No, the car was definitely red, dude. You don't know what you're talking about. All right. So you got one person insisting the car is red. You don't know what you're talking about. Then they start attacking the person almost, right? You don't know what you're doing. You don't your memory sucks or whatever, this, that, and the other. The car was definitely red. And here the car was actually green all along. Okay. But that person who thought the car was red, that's how they remembered it. And so this is what can happen in healthy relationships. And you got distinguish between the two things is that sometimes people just perceive an event differently. That doesn't mean they're intentionally trying to gaslight. All right. It's just that one person, just like one person thought the car was red and it wasn't red, but they insisted on that that was the truth, that was the case, you know? And so, and they would argue that point until it was really proven otherwise, the film shown again, and could really be put right up in their face that they were incorrect. And most of the time, when you're in a disagreement or argument with the person that you're with, right, your girl, it's like you can't just play the tape back, So you really are looking at perceptions, and it's your perception and her perception. And what happens is guys have a strong inclination to want to take care of the girl and to caretake for her feelings. So when she thinks that you're giving a false perception or a false narrative, she gets upset or she gets insistent over something different. Most guys, their default is to question their own thoughts. To say, well, wait, oh, okay, maybe it wasn't like that, and maybe it was different. You tell me how you think it was. Or so a guy is trying to solve problems. Is what I usually see. Keep in mind, I usually coach men. Now, I'm sure there's, I know there's narcissistic guys out there or whatever, but that's, here nor there. Okay. But usually what I see with most normal guys is that when that reality of what happened or what occurred or whatever is challenged, they, in an open minded sense, challenge that themselves. Like, well, wait, maybe it was different. I don't know. Let's talk about it. Right. Especially as she gets more and more emotionally distressed and upset, and then and accusatory even in some of those things, depending on what lines she's crossed. A lot of guys will just go, okay, well, wait a second, what's maybe it's different. Because your goal as a man, instinctually, your mammalian brain wants to take care of that baby maker. You want to make sure it's mentally and emotionally taken care of so that you could go, fight bad guys, bring all the resources from the big hunt. All right. Assuming that we're back in nomadic tribes again. Okay. So, like, your hindbrain, right? Your mammalian brain is going to cause you to question these things. And she's insistent that reality is different, you're going to question yourself and question. You're going to want to be open-minded. Her motive is different. Okay, usually her motive is to be a good chimpanzee. So you want to be the use. You as a man, you're trying to be the useful chimpanzee. She's being the good chimpanzee, meaning she doesn't want to look bad. So you're trying to make sure her feelings and stuff are taken care of because we have a drive to take care of the baby maker, right? Because the woman that we have in our life and trust or whatever, even back to ancient times, where was responsible for caretaking for our resources, caretaking for children, and so we wanted to make sure she was good, you know. Whereas the girl wants to be seen as good by you and seen as good by others. If she's seen as a bad person or a bad chimpanzee, then she could be discarded. She could be, you know, back in some really bad times, stoned to death, right? Some crazy stuff could happen to her if she was seen as a bad girl. So she wants to be seen as a good girl, which means she is probably going to double down on her perception of reality. Because if she's wrong or if she's not, didn't do the right thing, whatever, or even if her perception of what happened is false, and that means bad things for her, maybe she looks like a bad girl now. And so for her, there's more of an existential threat to defend herself from being a bad girl and to not want to look like a bad girl than there is for you. You don't care as much if you look like a bad guy because you just want to make sure that you are having value by providing, uh, accomplishing things, being useful, bringing in resources, protection, and making sure she's okay. You see, so there's a difference here between the male and female brain and how we process our relationships. Something that conventional psychology doesn't want to recognize, which is why they've been wildly unsuccessful at helping the divorce rates. All right. Because they can't recognize that men and women are actually different on a biological level and it affects the way that our brains work and the way that we think. Now, there are individual differences, of course, but there are sexual characteristics and genderized differences and how we think. And so in a heterosexual relationship, you tend to have a woman thinking a certain way and a guy thinking a certain way. Not right or wrong, it just is. Anyways, what this leads can lead to is you as a guy being accused of gaslighting because your her perceptions are different than yours. Back to the example, you think the car is green, she thinks the car is red, but she is worried that you're trying to manipulate her into thinking something that didn't happen, right? And so that's why she is getting more insecure. We'll say insecure. I don't mean that as an insult, but she's getting more um, concerned and upset and anxious when her argument isn't matching your perception of reality. She may accuse you or think, especially if this happens frequently, that you're trying to gaslight as a man. And so she will accuse you now of that or blame that on you. The other side of it is that she could be gaslighting you in a sense, and I say a sense because to me, gaslighting, the difference between gaslighting and just having a difference in perception is intentionally trying to manipulate that. She could be unintentionally manipulating your concept of what happened and concepts of reality because she's trying to defend herself and protect her own ego. So she wants to look like a good girl, not a bad girl. And she does believe in her through that filter. She does believe maybe she's right in her behavior, maybe things didn't happen the way you say, and so on and so forth. So this can feel like gaslighting to you. And this is why couples today in 2024 who like to use psychological terms to throw at each other, a lot of times it's pretty common, and everybody wants to be a victim nowadays. So everybody throws around the term gaslight, you know, but it's not always an appropriate term or appropriately what's happening. Okay, in a regular relationship, it's just perception of reality that's different between two people. And the solution there is you as a man, you need to have frame. This doesn't mean be stubborn and your perceptions, everyone else's perceptions can f off because your perceptions could be wrong and you recognize that, but don't be so quick to give them up. This is what leads to having a Luca conversation, which I've talked about here. You can search that up, the format of Luca, which is, listen, understand, clarity, and action. And so it's a communication formula with your girl, okay? And you can have that Luca conversation where you ask questions and you try to piece together what her sense of reality is in comparison to what you experienced or what you remember yourself experiencing. You're doing it with an open mind and you're piecing together what actually happened between you and her, the two different perceptions. You're not giving more weight or credibility to her perception, and you're not doing that for yours either. You're just going to compile the evidence from a Luca conversation, which is a non accusatory conversation where you're listening and understanding the other person's perception. And that will let you determine what reality is. Okay. And by doing that, listening and understanding, she's not going to necessarily feel like you're trying to gaslight her or manipulate the situation. She'll understand that you're trying to discover what happened and you're recognizing you can make the statement of fact too, so that she recognizes that sometimes what we think we remember and our experiences aren't exactly true. We're both anybody's guilty of that. I want to make sure I'm not guilty of that. Let's talk about it. You know what I mean? And so the other component here is you need to pick a girl that isn't arrogant. Arrogance is the downfall and death of relationships, particularly if the girl is arrogant. Okay, she needs to be able to understand that maybe her perception is not correct either. Maybe she's not right either. And just because something feels true, that doesn't make it true. And she needs to understand that what makes her a good girl is her ability to have these conversations with you, not just ego protect and dig her heels in harder when she's challenged and her beliefs and thoughts are challenged. All right. So you have to pick somebody who's capable of doing lead them into that. So that's your solution. Now, gaslighting, though, gaslighting is a fundamentally different thing than having different perceptions. Gaslighting is when the other person is intentionally trying to shift things off of them, shift blame, shift your perceptions of yourself, your reality. And oftentimes, this can be a planned attack as well. So she can do this, you know, to you in a very planned way. I talked about reactive abuse here before. That's one very common way women like to get you to question your perception of yourself. I say women, not all women, women who are toxic, women who are trying to take power in a relationship in a negative or toxic way because they feel insecure, or outright covert narcissistic personality disordered women. Okay, so this is something that can happen, and they are intentionally trying to be manipulated. So to me personally, I distinguish gaslighting between intentional manipulation and trying to alter someone's reality in an intentional way versus I have a different opinion of how the events went. Those are two different things. And so in your relationships, for some action too, guys and any of the few girls that do watch me, don't go into your relationships accusing the other person of gaslighting like right away. They're if that person might not be intentionally trying to manipulate that person, your girlfriend, or if you're a few women, your boyfriend or husband, wife, he or she might, just have a different perception of reality and believes in their perception as much as you believe in yours. And so now you have a disagreement, and you guys need to come to a conclusion on what matters in that disagreement and what's true or not, and how much of it matters. Even because a lot of times it doesn't even matter what you're arguing. Okay, so this is where you both have a little bit of humility and you come to the table and have a good conversation using the Luca communication model. But you know, it, don't just assume because a person's perceptions are different and they're insisting on that and they're in a disagreement with you that they're gaslighting. All right, so it's really important. But gaslighting, what's going to be different about that is that you're going to see a pattern of gaslighting. Okay, so in other words, it's going to be something that they will do as a pattern. So it's not going to just show up once. And you're going to do other techniques too to try to distort your reality. They're not just in a disagreement with you at this point and insistent upon their version of reality. They're going to try to convince others, convince you of this reality. So it's like trying to convince or sell you on reality more so than just being sure of themselves. You could have one person. So, example, she might think the car was red. You think the car was green. Okay. But she could be insistent on that. She could, you know, telling you the car was not green and something's wrong with your eyeballs. It was definitely red. That's not necessarily gaslighting. All right. But if she knows that it might not be red, or if she knows for sure it wasn't red, but she knows she needs to get you to believe it's red so she can get what she wants, that's now entering the realm of gaslighting. And then what does she do? Well, now she's going to she could start using toxic techniques that are on the list of narcissistic abuse techniques to try to gaslight and change your perceptions of reality. So she might outright lie to you. Well, I saw the car earlier and I know it was red because I got to see it earlier and whatever, or I've seen this before. So she starts making up lies to try to get that to sway your opinion and perceptions. She tries to get other people. She triangulates, or she starts spreading rumor and gossiping about you to others. Well, he always thinks things are like this when it's really not. To try to get other people to skew your perception of reality as well, to agree with her. You know, she might distract you with details or distract you with points to try to make things more confusing so that she, you know, basically highlight, kind of move you away from the perception of reality that you think that you're perceiving. She can try to confuse that by bringing other details in and kind of giving you a blitzkrieg of things and attacks and concerns and whatever. And so that's a way she can minimize your feelings, minimize your thoughts, discredit you, right? Um, deny anything that she's done that could be wrong, that could be different. Um, she could even use compassionate words, compassionate language, and this is lying through influence, by the way, where she'll go, I would never try to lie to you, and I love you, and I would never try to, you know, tell you something. I'd never try to convince you of something that wasn't true, but this is really what happened. She might use those pleading languages and passionate things too, right? And she could be doing a mixture of all of these things. And so there's a lot more of them. We can talk about them in further videos because I actually have to go jump on a console. But I just wanted to chime in with another video on the topic of covert narcissism and some of the techniques that we use. A big one, and it shows up in a lot of different forms. So a lot of these things that I gave like a list of things in video one. Uh, we talked about a few things, and I'm going to get back to that list, listing things for those who want the list, right? But that said, so gaslighting is in the list, but it's kind of bigger because it combines a lot of these things that are on the list in order to shift your reality. So, quick question from James says, Paul, I'd like to be as smart as you one day. Well, thank you. Wednesday, I don't think about how smart I am or am not. Thank you very much. Your channel is incredible, and I want even more. Would you do a video on your favorite books and resources? Yeah, maybe at some point. So here's the thing, James. A lot of my reading over the past 20 years when it comes to these topics has been very boring. Has been research type stuff. I read scientific studies. I read, you know, I read stuff from journals that can often be very dry and hard to follow. So I'm not just regurgitating and I do read, of course, the mixture of uh, novels and books and things that people write on topics as well. So I read quite a bit. And one thing I haven't been really good at is sourcing information. Like it's been 20 years of stuff. And I'm not like sourcing things to try to, you know, think about back up my credibility in that way. Like when I started doing all this research, it just wasn't a thought of mine. So I'll come back to that. But I mean, there's been a lot of good, books and resources, and maybe I'll come up with a reading list. And I'll consider that. I've had that asked of me more than once, so I should consider a book, like kind of a list of required reading to give me a good foundation. I think that would be pretty useful. But understand, like a lot of the reading I do. So I'm a coach. I help guys do better. The difference between coaching and therapy is that although there's some therapeutic stuff that we do in coaching to remove barriers and stuff like that, the goal in coaching is to move forward and achieve goals versus treat mental health disorders or some of the other things therapy does. And so, in this coaching format for my people, my clients, and stuff like that, I'm always researching new information. I'm always trying to figure out what's new, what's up to date. But I'm not a researcher myself, so I don't work at a university where I'm running clinical trials or I'm a part of those things. So I rely on the research. I rely on two things. One is we call it field reports, what people are actually experiencing in the real world, and they share that with me through coaching experiences. And I also read about people's experiences when they pick things up, different resources when they share things. You know what I mean? So there's the field, what happens in real life, okay, and then there's the research, what happens in the academic world. And so I am not in the academic world working at a university running studies, you know. So I have to rely on those who are professional in the psychological community, the biology world, the neurology world, and all the science-based stuff that they're trying to learn, like develop. And have to be able to look at that research and see what's good from that research and what isn't good, right? Because a lot of research is bad research too. And so that's a lot of what I spend my time doing when it comes to reading. And so it's a bit dry and it's not like a single source I can give you necessarily. But I will definitely think about putting together like a good reading list for guys who want to get a good base of knowledge. I'm going to conclude with this really is the knowledge and the reasoning and the understanding of things is something I give away to you guys for free. That's something that's open source. I share it. I share with you what I know. Now, dial down to your specific circumstance, your girlfriend, your wife, your breakup, or whatever. That's obviously on YouTube. This is not this. I'm not dialed into your specific details. That's something I would do in a coaching environment. But I give away the knowledge for free as much as I can, and there's so much out there to learn and to give. And I'm constantly learning new things myself. So I give that stuff away for free. But you need to understand something if you're listening right now that knowledge by itself does not lead to change. It'd be great if it did, but it doesn't. You guys all know what to do, what you're supposed to do. You've all known what you should do, and then you didn't do it. You've all known, like, here's what I need to do, and then you don't do what you're supposed to do. You do the wrong thing, and you knew you were doing the wrong thing when you're doing it. All right, like this is the crux of human behavior is that we often do what we're not supposed to, and we know it. Okay, so we know it afterwards, or we know it before, or we just decide to conveniently not be self-aware when we're making those mistakes, or when we're doing the wrong things, or when we're distracting ourselves, or when we're just not doing, instead of just not doing the things we're supposed to be doing. And so we do that all the time. Knowledge and reasoning and understanding of things does not lead you to change directly. Okay, there's other components involved. This is what I work with guys in coaching platforms and programs on because the knowledge is out there. You can look it up yourself. I try to put up as much as I can here, but on a coaching platform, we're going to work on the actual behavioral plan and taking action. What types of behavior do you need to do? What do you need to actually do? And what are the steps? We need to break up those steps differently or into smaller steps. And you need to be out taking action. And then you need to be able to, handle the emotional and energetic components to get in the way and sabotage you from taking the correct action. So that's something we unravel in coaching sessions and coaching groups and stuff like that. And because taking action and doing the right answer creates all of this distress in a person, you need to have accountability also because that discomfort of change will cause you to not make the change you need to make. So accountability is a big component of coaching. And then the last thing is community or social support. We're social animals, so we want people around us that support what we're trying to do to be successful and to get better. If we have people around us that are taking away from those things, then it's going to be harder for us to do what we're supposed to, right? And so those are the components that are going to lead you in the right direction. Knowledge is important, but you have to change the behavior, deal with the inner game, okay? Have the accountability and have the social support. Hit me up with a DM if you're interested in coaching because that's what is provided, not just the YouTube knowledge. I give that stuff away for free. Okay, my Zoom calls aren't just an extension of the YouTube channel. All right, I'm with you as a person to try to help you make changes. So that's that difference there. But thanks for listening. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the stuff. Hopefully, you learned something about gaslighting. Next video, we'll get into more of those techniques and stuff and how they show up when someone's doing things that are abusive. All right, take care.